Hello and welcome to the very first We All Follow United pod. That's right, we have just done our own internal review, spoke to multiple stakeholders because we wanted to get this decision right, and we decided to change. We made the change, we've changed the name. I love the name, Better the Devil You Know. However, whenever I typed it into YouTube, all I would see was Kylie Minogue. And I feel like the Kylie Minogue audiences and the Manu audience, yes, there'll be some overlap, but perhaps that's not the sweet spot when it comes to YouTube SEO. So we've changed it to We All Follow United. Let's see, maybe in 4 days' time, I'll change it again to. It doesn't really matter too much at this stage. What does matter is that Manchester United's fixtures came out earlier on today. So let's do something a bit different. Let's change it up a little bit, have a new background because the white, the beige might not be working for everyone. And let's take a look at the key fixtures for next season. So here we go then, courtesy of BBC Sport. You are welcome to sponsor this should you so wish. First game up is actually the pre-season friendly, City United. What happened last time we played them at Wembley? Can't quite remember. But yeah, looking forward to that one. Good chance to see the summer signings, should they arrive, and how well they perform. Not a massive issue either way if we win or lose that one. We won the important one a month or so ago now. And then it's against home at Fulham. So that's how our Premier League campaign kicks off, which is an interesting fixture. I think back when is that 2007, we beat them 5-1. Was that the last time we started with Fulham? And that was when we went on to win the league and the Champions League. This time round, we actually lost to Fulham, right? In February, I think it was 2-1. So in some ways, already a yardstick and a measure of whether there's improvement and progress from Ten Hag and his team. And definitely United need to be starting that one with a win or the pressure will already start on Eric. Up next, it's Brighton, who we typically don't actually do that well against. We did win the last match we played, but they have been quite consistently a bogey team. So it'll be interesting. They've just appointed the new Sao Paulo manager, so they'll still be bedding in. So it's going to be quite an interesting game, that. And then it's Liverpool at Old Trafford. So the first 3 games all have varying degrees of difficulty, depending on what's happened either last season, kind of in the most recent history, or of course, it's our biggest rivals. Now, it will be interesting given that Liverpool also have a new manager. So it might not be the worst time to be playing up against Arne Slot's team when he's still kind of coming to grips with the league. They're potentially only just betting in any new signings that they make. So I'm not too sad that we play them early. Although when it is early on in the season, those games can be a bit of a damp squib. But of course we actually played them. Was it it was our second home game in Eric Ten Hag's first season. So actually there is a nice parallel, and that was a 2-1 victory, which really kind of kick-started the season after 2 pretty bad defeats. So it will be an interesting start, interesting August. And I think already after those 3 games, let's see how we're doing, because there could be enormous pressure on Ten Hag if he doesn't get off to a decent start. Moving on into September then, Southampton away. We always seem to play Southampton away early on in the season. Typically that's a draw, so let's hope we can do better there. Then it's Palace away as well, so we're going to have to try and avenge the 4-0 loss last season. It feels weird saying last season already. And then in between the Palace and Spurs game, there will be a Europa League game. But however, Spurs also will be playing in that game. So you'll probably have 2 teams of similar levels of fatigue, which might work well in our favour. October sees Villa away. That's going to be a tough one. We did win that one last season, but God knows how. Villa will have played Champions League a few days prior to that game. We'll have also played a Europa League game. So they will have a little bit of an edge, but it will be a Champions League game, potentially quite emotional and a significant step up from European matches that Villa have played in the kind of the past. Brentford at home, of course, the last season, those 2 late McTominay goals sealed the win. And then United do have another Europa game prior to playing West Ham, and that could be quite difficult. So presumably this game moves to a Sunday. Maybe hopefully a later kick-off on the Sunday just to give United that a little bit extra rest. But that could be a tough game actually, because I don't think West Ham will have played in midweek, so they will have had a full week's rest before playing United. Here are the fixtures for November. We've got Chelsea, that's a clear standout. Ipswich versus Manchester United are going to play McKenna's team for the first time. November should be a pretty decent month for United. Yeah, Chelsea may be hard, but that looks like that's like a pretty decent run. And then moving on to December. December is the only month actually where United play two Big Six teams in the same month. So I think that's actually quite favourable looking at it. Going to be a tough game against Arsenal, of course, is their European games. It doesn't seem to be a European game prior or just following the Arsenal game, which is good. Then, of course, it's the City game, the derby. There will be Europa League game prior to that. So City will also have a Champions League game. So that's a bit unfortunate because that does mean City will have played earlier than us and maybe have a bit more time to rest. But kind of depends on the situations in the group, doesn't it? Maybe United are able to kind of rest players depending on where they are in this new league format. Bournemouth just before Christmas seems like a decent game, although didn't work out so well for us last season. Wolves away on Boxing Day, that could be a tough one. That could be quite a dull one for the hangovers. Although actually the 3-4 last season, so you never know. And then Newcastle. So quite a lot of games obviously in December. We've got clear standouts of the Arsenal and City games, but Newcastle just before New Year's Eve as well could be a key match. Into January, the big one, of course, Liverpool at Anfield. The other games look okay. We're playing Brighton again. We've not done very well against Brighton at home over the last few seasons, so hopefully we can change that around. Moving into February, Spurs away on the 15th. I haven't looked at kind of European games because God knows if United will still be in the Europa League at this stage, but that could obviously impact the turnaround times for players and make these games potentially harder for us, but we just don't know at this stage. McKenna comes home on the 26th of February. March, not too busy March at the looks of it, just the two games. Is there I need to work that out. Why? Is there an international break? Is there some kind of Premier League break for a few weeks? But yes, just the Arsenal and Leicester games in March. Then we move on to April, which is pretty action-packed. At least five games, depending on what United are in other competitions. It's when we play City, so the big game, kind of the 5th of April weekend, and then Newcastle away. So that's going to be a pretty spicy early to mid-April fixtures. And then it kind of, Wolves at home, Bournemouth away, not too bad. Brentford away, not too bad. West Ham at home, not too bad. Obviously, the Chelsea away, not a fixture we can sometimes struggle, and the referees just need to get it right and get it wrong a lot in that game. And then we finally finish with Villa at home, which could be quite an interesting game, depending on how important it is for United. So that's it. That's your recap of the fixtures. What do you think? I mean, overall, I think it's pretty good. Sometimes you come up again and there's like 3 or 4 fixtures in a row where you think, oh God, that's going to be really, really difficult, one after the other, and then they follow a European game. This time, actually, all of our bigger games against, harder sides or the tougher away games seem to be reasonably well spaced out throughout the season, which can be a good thing. Usually it is a good thing. I guess it depends. If your team is in great form, sometimes perhaps you want to be playing the tough teams all at once. But I think generally speaking, it's probably quite good, and also means that you that there's variance on the injury front, that yes, one player may miss 1 or 2 big games, but because they're not all condensed in the same space of time, they may potentially be back for the later ones. The Europa League games as well, they seem to come at decent times when we're playing against other teams that have already been in Europe as opposed to the rest. One of the exceptions seemed to be the West Ham game. That could be quite tough. And I seem to remember we seem to always play West Ham away just after a European game, which does make that game a little bit trickier. But let's cross that bridge when we come to it. They'll also have a new manager, so we don't really know what to expect just yet from West Ham. But overall, I think the start is going to be very key, and we obviously want Ten Hag to do well and to succeed now that he has been given the seal of approval from Ineos. So that Fulham game at home, we're going to be starting the season, has to be a win. It has to be a much better performance than when we played them just a few months previously, and then it's straight to Brighton away, which is historically always been a trickier game for United, and then Liverpool at home. So it's a tricky opening set of fixtures without it being insurmountably difficult. And I think after 3 games, we'll already get a sense of where this United team is and how the fan sentiment is reacting to this style of football that Ten Hag is trying to play, the new signings, should they be there, and already get a sense of does Ten Hag already feel like his job is in danger just 3 games into the season, which is obviously very early time to make those decisions, but I think he really needs to kind of hit the ground running, and there is opportunity in those fixtures, albeit they are quite tricky. But overall, I think it's a decent one. I look at that and I don't think of it's a particularly bad run. So fingers crossed for next season. A lot to happen prior to then, of course, and we will cover as much of it as we can here. So thank you very much for watching. I will see you on the next time. Peace.